Welcome back to the channel. This is a loose graded only video. You guys seem to like the last one I did, and I hadn't done one in a while. Not because I don't want to do them. It's just because there's not enough data. And lately there have been a lot more loose graded AFA, UKG, CAS graded figures that have popped up on eBay. Somebody mentioned this. I think it was Peter L. I don't know if this is true. I hadn't verified this, but apparently the PayPal rule or the eBay rule, where I think it was supposed to be a $600 threshold before it became a taxable event or a reportable event to the IRS, that had been removed again, and it's back to the 200 transactions or $20,000 of value. So that might be part of it as to why we're seeing more stuff on eBay. Obviously, you still got to pay the eBay fees, but avoiding the taxation, the reporting to the IRS is a big deal. And a $600 threshold that was planned apparently has been pushed back yet again. So I think they should just get rid of it personally, but I don't know if it'll ever happen. We've already been taxed on this stuff once when we bought it. We had to pay sales tax. All right, that's enough of that. Let's take a look at some vintage figures. This seller had some fairly common figures, but high grade. We got a small head Han Solo molded legs. Obviously, the painted legs is the one that's a little tougher to get, but this one was the molded leg small head. That one sold for $241. No big surprise on that one. The Princess Leia, this was the brown hair and belt variant, Hong Kong. Old case AFA, and it still sold for $504, which I was really surprised by. That number feels high to me, but it just could be a fact of there hasn't been a lot of AFA 85 Leias on eBay in auctions lately. It seems like they've been 80s or 80 pluses, which tend to go in that 200 to 250 range. But for the old case, I was thinking it might go 400, maybe 450 tops, but it would end up going for 504, which is getting pretty close to where the new case styles go for. So a little bit surprised it went that high, but maybe I shouldn't be. This is one I had, it was in the same lot, but this is one I featured in my what to buy video. And I said, hey, this is a good one to target because it's an AFA 85 Taiwan R2D2, but one of the pegs broke off inside the case. And I thought that this would be a good one. If you got it for cheap enough, you could send it in to AFA for reholdering, which doesn't cost much, and they turn them around really quickly. They return reholderings within about a month or so. And so this one had the broken peg, and it did sell for what I consider to be about right, to where it still makes sense to roll the dice that the grade's not going to change if you send it back into AFA. I think it gets the AFA 85 again. I didn't really see anything wrong with the figure. So good deal there at $310. Send it back into AFA to get it recased, and you got yourself a $450 to $500 figure, which is what a Taiwan AFA 85 would go for normally without any of the broken pegs. Next up, we've got a Luke. Well, I got three different Lukes. This is the first one. This is an old case-style blonde hair, dark pants, China COO. That one sold for $493. Again, about right where I'd expect it to go. China's maybe a little tougher to find. They don't pop up that regularly. Usually they're Hong Kongs, but that China COO did go for $493. Then we had a double telescoping Luke Farm Boy. I did not see this one get listed, but it was an 80 grade. Archival case. This one was graded in July of 2016. Telescoping saber. You can see the certificate of authenticity there from Tom Derby. And I didn't see it get listed, but it had a starting bid of $1,000, which I thought was low, and only one bid. So I think someone got a really good deal there for an AFA 80 archival double telescoping saber. With the new case style, new-ish case style, it doesn't have the inner filament kind of fully extended now like they do now. So this is kind of like this generation 2 or 3 case. But $1,000, that to me feels like a pretty good deal for what that is. Great price there. Next up is the third Luke Farm Boy. This one was a no COO from the Muffin Man. He had some nice gems that we're going to go through. I didn't pull up all of his auctions, but I pulled up a couple of nice ones. So this is the no COO brown hair, the typical tri-logo Luke that you see inside tri-logos, or Palatoy Luke. That one sold for 141 pounds, which is $188. Pretty decent deal for a UKG 80%. They had a Spanish PBP dark pouch Chewbacca. That one is, again, a pretty easy one to find and doesn't typically go for more than about 90 pounds. So this one went for right where I would expect it to go for, which is 91 pounds or about 122 US dollars. This one was an interesting one. This one was a short pour factory error for the Death Squad commander. You can see the foot there didn't get enough plastic injection for the molding, and so his foot is kind of stubby. He's a little bit stubby, and so his label, it says short pour mold foot error, and that's what it is. You can tell very clearly that the foot was not fully developed. So that one was a UKG 80% and sold for 104 pounds, which is 139 bucks. I mean, that feels like a pretty fair deal for what that is. You see these all the time. You see like short pour hands or short pour feet. Those are the most common defects that you see. And that one was pretty cool, I thought, for 139 US. And then here was another one from the Muffin Man. This was a UKG 85% R2-D2 pop-up lightsaber. I included a ungraded example as well because I've heard a couple of comments that people are looking for R2-D2 pop-up, either loose or loose graded. So I got a couple of data points here for you. This one is a UKG 85%. That one sold for $891. And this is the only non-graded figure in this auction, but I was just trying to help out a couple of folks that were asking about them. This one sold for $510. And in my what to buy video that I just made that has not released yet, but by the time it does release, it will have already been out by the time this video releases. Hopefully that made sense. But this one sold for $510. I had one in my what to buy video that was in better shape, in my opinion, that is listed for $550 or best offer. But the dome on the one in my what to buy video is cleaner than this one. And I think the sticker overall is cleaner as well. It's a little whiter than this one. The back of it is probably a little cleaner, but the front is not as clean, in my opinion. And the dome definitely is not as clean. So hopefully one of y'all, by the time you watch this video, hopefully one of y'all were able to pick up that one that was listed for $550 or best offer. So, but this one in an auction did sell for $510. And again, for a UKG 85%, that one went for $891. Just another loose graded figure. We got a Yoda, very common, but it's an AFA 85 plus. And that one was a gold level, AFA 85 plus. That sold for $250. I thought that was a pretty fair deal for what that is. Very nice deal there. And then some last 17 figures before we dig into some Jeff Jacobs collectibles, including some Uzays. So this one was an AFA 85 plus for Warwick. And that's one you don't see that often in an 85 plus. It was an archival gold level AFA 85 plus, new case style. For whatever reason, this one just does not pop up above about an 85. And that's the first time I remember seeing one anytime in the recent time period. I mean, we've seen some CAS 90s and things like that, but it's always tough to gauge a CAS 90 versus like an 85 or an 85 plus AFA. But this one did sell for a big number, $485. I mean, that's what you can get a pretty decent condition mock for. And so that just shows you that there is some demand for some of these loose last 17 figures that are in very high grade. Luke Jedi, I got them out of order here, but I do have some more last 17 in a second. This one is a Taiwan AFA 85. That one sold for $250. I sent that out to my Patreons. I don't know if any of y'all bought that. I thought that was a fair price for an AFA 85. Back to the last 17s. Now, this guy had some interesting sales where some of them went for well above what I expected, and then some went for less. This one went for less than what I was really expecting. This one is an AFA 85 Imperial Gunner archival AFA 85 case with the coin inside a secondary case, and that one sold for $462, which feels like a really good deal to me for an AFA 85. And the same seller also has a Luke in a second, but this AFA 80 plus Yak Face just sold for $703. So Yak Face continues to be a pretty expensive figure. That's one, again, I've talked about this a lot, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but the Yak Face there's the most of them in an AFA 85 and 90, or an 85 plus. So there's no point, in my opinion, of getting an 80 plus for $703 when you can get an AFA 85 for like $850. But you know, if you're on a budget, I get it. You know, you maybe just can get the highest grade you can, but it's just interesting that most of the figures that are graded, most of the yak faces that are graded by AFA are 85s and above. So it's interesting how that works for that one. And then going back to that other seller, this is one that really surprised me on the upper end. I thought the Imperial Gunner AFA 85 went cheap. I thought this Luke Stormtrooper went high. This was an archival, but it was only AFA 80 plus, new K style, and it sold for $918, which is a massive number. But we have seen some big numbers recently on loose graded Luke Stormtroopers, so maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. But that one did get an AFA 80 plus, and it sold for $918.93. Huge number. All right, we're going to finish things off with a few items from Jeff's Collectible Empire, which is Jeff Jacobs' son that runs this eBay account. So this is just a standard Hong Kong Darth Vader AFA 85 though, and it sold for $177, which that's really cheap. Now, as a side note, I found another AFA 85 Hong Kong Darth Vader, this exact same figure, exact same case, exact same grade, and it sold for $499 in a buy it now situation. And then you got this one in an auction that sold for less than half that price, $177.50 or $500. You pick. You know, this is admittedly the cheapest price I've seen for a standard Hong Kong AFA 85 Vader in a long time. But, you know, even in a normal auction where maybe it goes for closer to fair market value, I still think $250, maybe $300 tops. But someone did pay $500 for a standard AFA 85 Hong Kong Darth Vader. Don't pay that. Just be patient. Wait for an auction for these very common items. And this is proof of that when you can get it for $325 less than what they paid. But here was the other interesting one. This was an AFA 85 plus Lily Letty. Now this one, another one just sold in a buy it now for $450. This one sold for $376.33. So I thought that was a pretty decent deal relative to the buy it now that I've talked about in another market update. And I said, remember this price. And I think it was $450 if memory serves. So AFA 85 plus, again, the same figure in an auction went for $376.33. So much better deal there on an AFA 85 plus. And we'll finish things off with the Uzays, the Turkish bootlegs from SB Products from around 1988. These are tough to find figures. This is the thin armband Stormtrooper Uzay, 70 plus grade, thin armband, no blaster. That sold for $336. And you can see there are two different variations. Thin armbands, thick armbands around the elbows there. So this is the thick armband. That one was a 70 grade, sold for $271. The Hoth Snowtrooper Uzay was a 75 plus and sold for $291. But the big boy was the AFA Qualified 85 Emperor's Royal Guard. No cloak and no staff. But this is a very tough to find figure just in this kind of grade. And it did sell for big numbers, $615.67. But beautiful figure there. And one of the tougher to find variants. The headband is the toughest. But the Turkish bootleg Emperor's Royal Guard is like maybe fourth or fifth behind like the R2-D2 or the R5-D4. But this is a very desirable figure, especially in this grade. And that one did sell for a big number. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the look at recent loose graded figure sales prices. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.